Hey friends! So this week we have been learning about birds. So today, after we sing our little bird songs, we are going to be building nests. But before we get into doing that, I wanted to read you guys a book called The Best Nest. So enjoy the story. All right, we're going to be observing and listening to what the birds are using to build their nest. So first, let's go over our parts of the book, right? So this part right here, what's this part of our book called? This is our front cover, right? It's at the very front, the very first thing you see in your book. You turn it around, just like we have a front, we also have a back, right? So this is our back cover. This part right here, that holds all of our pages together, that is our spine, right? And we just kind of said, oh, what are these? So the pages, right? And then we always have an illustrator and an author. The author writes the words and the illustrator draws the pictures. This author and illustrator is the same person, and their name is P.D. Eastman. So they wrote the book and they drew the pictures. All right, the best nest. Ready? Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing, and this was his song. I love my house, I love my nest, in all the world my nest is best. See Mama Bird. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It's not the best nest, she said. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I don't like it. Let's look for a new place right now. She's angry. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. See him coming over here to the hole in the tree? But somebody else had already moved in. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. What is that? A shoe, right? They gonna live in a shoe? You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. What's gonna happen, you think? What is that? Let's see. But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. Yeah, that's the mailbox, right? It's where the mailman puts the mail. They can't live there. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. You can see him flying up over here on top of the building. They flew in, they looked around. Isn't it too big, said Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. Do you know what this is? I guess we'll see. They went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. They got some soda straws and broom straws. They got some sweater string. They got some stocking string and mattress stuffing. Let's see all the different things they're grabbing. We got string, we got cotton, they got some horsehair, they got some man hair. Silly. Yeah, they use hair for their nest too, huh? Soon they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the sticks, all the leaves, all the stuffing, all the horsehair, and all the man hair they could carry. And they took it all back to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This nest is really the best, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. You see their nest? Where is it? Yeah, you can see they built it all up on top of here. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of his house and he sang his song again. I love our house, I love our nest, in all the world our nest is best. He was so busy singing, he didn't see Mr. Parker coming. Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to the church. He came to pull on the rope. The rope went up to the bird's nest. The rope rang the big bell. That's what it was, right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Bong, bong, bong. Look at Mrs. Bird up here. Yeah, so the bell's making that very large bong sound. And how do you think Miss Bird feels? Yeah, she's a little scared, right? Scared her. It's a loud sound. Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could. Bong, bong, bong. There goes Mrs. Bird. Here's Mr. Bird up here. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and hair and straws and leaves and sticks. But where was Mrs. Bird? See her? I will look for her until I find her, said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low. He looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. He looked down into the chimney, but Mrs. Bird was not there. He looked down into a water barrel, but Mrs. Bird was not there. Then he saw a big fat cat. There was a big fat smile on the fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the fat cat's mouth. You see all the feathers on the ground? Mr. Bird began to cry. Oh dear, he cried. This big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird.